Hello, my English name is Teresa Edwards, and my traditional name is Bookdaway Ebides, Young Firewoman. I'm Mi'kmaq First Nation and a member of the Listigouche First Nation in Quebec, but I'm coming to you today as a guest here on Algonquin unceded territory in Ottawa, Canada. I'm the Executive Director of the Legacy of Hope Foundation, a national Indigenous organization that works to raise awareness of the shared history of residential and day schools and other colonial acts of oppression in order to address discrimination and injustice and to foster hope and healing in Canada. I'm here to speak to you today about Confederation Park. Confederation Park is named for an event, Confederation, which was essentially the birth of Canada as a country, as people may now know it. But in order for Canada to come into being, the Indigenous peoples of the land would have had to cease to exist. And thankfully, that was not the case. Confederation and the creation of Canada, which is celebrated by some on July 1st, known as Canada Day, can also be seen as a celebration of colonialism and the attempted erasure of Indigenous peoples. Confederation Park is located on Elgin Street, which is named after Lord Elgin, the Governor General of Canada at the time. Lord Elgin supported the Bagot Report, which was one of the first in a series of policies designed to aggressively eliminate all that is Indigenous from our peoples. The Bagot Report specifically recommended that the day school system be replaced by the residential school system so that by separating children from their parents, they could destroy the connection to family, the community, and to their nation. It was seen as a more effective way to eliminate our way of being and all that is Indigenous. In order to honor the survivors of residential schools and those who never made it home, we call upon Canadians, our allies, to contact politicians at all levels of government to urge them to build a permanent monument to remember the children that attended these schools so that we can let the truth be told and learn from past mistakes while addressing ongoing inequities and injustices in Canada. If we look backwards through the generational lens, 7 generations back from 2021, and we consider every generation to be approximately 25 years, it would be 1846. This means that 7 generations forward is about the year 2196. Between 1676 to 1763, treaties were made between Indigenous nations and the British and French. Then in 1763, we had the Royal Proclamation issued by British Crown King George III. And in 1867, Canada's Constitution set out in section 9124 that the federal government had exclusive authority over Indians and lands reserved for Indians. And Sir John A. Macdonald became the first Prime Minister of Canada. From 1871 to 1921, there were 11 numbered treaties established. And in 1876, the Indian Act was passed. Then if we skip ahead a few years, in 1969, Canadian Prime Minister at the time was Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and he proposed the abolition of the Indian Act, known as the White Paper, but it was rejected. Not long afterward, Harold Cardinal, who was then the president of the Indian Association of Alberta, released the Red Paper, outlining an Indigenous vision for the future. In 1982, with the passage of the Constitution Act, Canada legally became Canada as we now know it. And at the same time, treaty rights and Indigenous rights were recognized and affirmed in Section 35 of the Constitution. In 1996, the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples released the report outlining many of the atrocities experienced by Indigenous peoples in Canada. This was later followed up by work by the Aboriginal Healing Foundation, the Legacy of Hope Foundation, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and many other organizations, communities, and individuals who have been committed to exposing this history and to taking action that addresses the impacts on all 7 generations. What we do today matters. We are the descendants of all who came before us. What we do today matters, for we will be the ancestors our descendants look back to one day to discover who made up the society here in Canada and to learn about who we were as a nation. In 2196, when our descendants look back 7 generations, they will be looking back at us in 2021. What do we want to leave as a nation for our future generations? We are history in the making. What we do today matters. In Confederation Park, there's a national memorial to Indigenous veterans. Would it not be fitting to have a national memorial or monument and wall dedicated to residential school survivors and to telling the truth about what has happened and is happening in Canada? In order to honor the generations of survivors of residential schools and to tell the world about the policies, practices, and injustices in Canada, we call upon all of our people and our allies to contact politicians at all levels of government to urge them to build a permanent monument to remember the survivors and those who never made it home. The truth must be told publicly and available for all to acknowledge and read about. We know that many of Canada's policies were to eliminate Indigenous governments, Indigenous and treaty rights, and to initiate a process of systematic action that would forever alter our once vibrant, diverse, and complex societies, cultures, and governance structures, along with our spiritual ways of being as Indigenous peoples. The establishment and operation of residential and day schools and the subsequent 60 Scoop were all central elements of these policies, which now, with the recent discoveries of the mass unmarked graves, all located by residential schools, must now be accurately described. It's genocide. 7 generations of experience, trauma, and the injustices have continued past the closure of the last residential school in 1997. With these discoveries, the trauma is continuing, and now we are mourning together as a country. We call on all Canadians to stand in solidarity with us to reimagine a Canada where the truth is told and where we can work together to eliminate injustice and discrimination and to foster reconciliation in Canada. Ulalin, thank you.